Welcome to the Fresh and Fired Up podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Emily Marshall, here to help you function at your best in health, fitness, and life. Joined by my co-host, the amazing Haley Piendl. Let's get fired up.
Let's get fired up. I am so ready. Last episode, 2025.
I know 2025 has flown by. Like we were just talking about this. It's like you blink and you're through another year. How does that even happen?
I honestly don't know. And like I mentioned, like COVID 6 years ago, that's craziness. It feels like it was last year. Maybe that's the only like landmark for my memory. I'm like, what is the last significant thing that happened was COVID? And I'm like, oh my gosh, 76 years ago?
That's
Holy
actually
smokes.
crazy. I've never even thought about that. But yeah, this is a weird concept.
Like
Oh
I was
man,
20 years old. I was 20. Ew, what the heck?
you were
Ugh,
20?
I was
Wow.
20.
Okay, so this is what's crazy though, is how do you even like when you think back on your year, you get to this time of year, and I feel like it can either be like, wow, this was such a great year, or some years I've gotten to the end of the year and I've been like, I don't want to redo this year. We made it. We survived.
Absolutely. Sometimes it's just the win is the surviving. That's just
Yeah.
how things are sometimes rather than propelling forward. I always tell my clients this too, like when they go on vacation and stuff, like the goal is not to progress, it's just to maintain, like just be and maintain all of the things that you've already mastered. And when things calm down, we can come back to it. So just kind of knowing your energy ebbs and flows. And some years are just flat out terrible and some are amazing.
Yes. Well, and a lot of it I think has to do with what are your expectations and also what's your perspective. Because I've had times where I've observed in people's behaviors where they feel like life is totally awful, but then objectively from the outside, their external environment, you're like, it's not that bad. If you're looking at needs being met, right? It's like you have shelter, you have water and food, and you have employment, or you have a school to go to. And it's like, but sometimes it's the internal stories that there's this battle going on inside that doesn't even meet your outside reality. And I feel like sometimes what happens if someone observes, unfortunately, I hate when tragedies happen, but sometimes if you witness or observe tragedy and then you realize, like, oh, wow, okay, this, I don't have it that bad. It's kind of a wake up call. You know, there can
Yeah.
sometimes be these wake up calls where you're like, okay, what are my expectations? And then these expectations create these unspoken contracts in your mind. And you'll get, when you're thinking about even this time of year, right? Coming through Christmas, New Year's, there's plans, there's excitement, there's travel, there's gifts. What else? Like meeting up with family. And you paint all these pictures in your mind, which I think a lot of them come from movies and music. Sometimes when you listen to the lyrics of music, you're like, oh, this seems like it should always be a Jingle Bell Wonderland, right? And the reality doesn't always meet that. So you get
Yeah.
this dopamine buildup of anticipation, but then when your reality doesn't match it, you'll actually get a drop in dopamine, and it's like,
Yeah.
oh crap, where does that leave you mentally and emotionally?
Exactly. It's called the expectation versus reality gap, and that's essentially, it's not really the reality in and of itself. It's more so the gap that's creating the disappointment, it's creating the depression, the anxiety, because like you said, you're expecting yourself to feel happy. It's the same thing we see so much with like body, right? Okay, I'm going to be really happy at 130 pounds. And like, say you get there and you realize that wow, I still beat myself up. I still have every single problem I had before. Like, you get
True.
to your goal and realize that that wasn't the problem. And I had
Mm.
this happen to me this year, actually. Almost everything, I'm quite proud of this, but also I hope that everyone gets to their goals just to realize that that is not going to solve their problems. Every single goal on my vision board essentially was ticked off. Like, I had a 6-figure year in my business for the first time ever. We're getting a dog, moving, perfect house, all this stuff.
You
And
got
I got to
engaged.
it. Yeah, I got engaged. Like, everything, I'm like, life is still the same, except I did fall victim to that expectation gap where I'm like, I actually expected myself to be a little bit more fulfilled than I am right now, which just goes to show your fulfillment is not in that result, which is why we talk about process goals and getting rooted in the process and that mundane day to day, because your result is not what gets you the happiness. It's that lens, like you've mentioned before. I keep this like front of mind all the time. You reference like washing the dishes and looking out at the sunset. And I'm like, I'm always top of mind with that. I'm like, yes, it's the lens that I put on my eyeballs of like, this task kind of sucks, like washing the dishes, but you can make it whatever you want to make it. So just rooting myself in those mundane day to day tasks and having my happiness be rooted in that is going to be my goal going into 2026. Cause like I said, like, I got reality tracked this year.
Right? Well, it's so interesting, like, and thank you for sharing that because I feel like so much of it is what is the disposition and how you're coming at things when it comes to work and life and everyday Monday things like you brought up. And I this sticks in my mind. It's like there's this part in the Bible that talks about like God loves a cheerful giver. And I'm bringing this up because it comes back to my mind because it's like there's a lot of us that have a lot of things in our lives. We have a lot of things going for us and we could be giving, right? It's like even when we're like, okay, we're going to give to the food bank. I don't know. We're going to give of our time. We're going to stop and we're going to help someone who's broken down on the side of the road. Or even when I think about it in the context of my own family and I think about siblings and how it's like you're all done. You've got time. You could help your sister who's not done yet. But when there's a resentment or like begrudging giving or helping, dude, that does not make anything better. It's like, it's almost like you might as well not even help. You might as well not even give. And so that whole line of like a cheerful giver, I love this word cheerful. It's like, it's not, and I've had my kids call me out and they were like, what, mom? We're not going to just be like happy and like just crazy happy all the time. And I'm like, I'm not asking you to be happy all the time. I understand that we all have our moods and emotions. And I'm not trying to negate, like, I've heard it said that we shouldn't even refer to them as positive and negative emotions. Like, we have the emotions that we go through in life, and they all serve their purpose and they all have a reason, right? And they all have a root usually. So I'm not asking you to just be like fake happy all the time. But I think the disposition of cheerfulness and the virtue of joy can go such a long way when you're looking at what are your expectations, what are your everyday requirements, and how do we get ourselves in a mindset, our hearts and our minds in this place where you can see it from a different perspective, like you brought up. I think it's really, really important.
Absolutely. And I think too, um, like a lot of people have this notion that life, everyone's chasing happiness, and that's the purpose of life. But there's that expectation gap because life isn't happy all the time, but you expect it to be. And so when you go through crap and the mud, because that's literally just life,
Yes.
you're very disappointed because it's like, oh my gosh, I'm supposed to be happy. I need to chase some sort of happiness. I'm missing something. There's always a lack of, where it's like, that's not the point of life. The point of life, I think, like happiness or success is just finding the peace in the moment, not
Yes.
like being overly joyful and happy all the time, and not obviously being like sad and depressed and anxious, but just
Yes.
finding peace in whatever era of life that you're in. And obviously I have not figured that out yet, but
Yes, well, and that's the thing. And there is a distinction there because happiness, like being happy, is more of the mood or emotion, right? It's more of the like when you are in that heightened state and you're like, oh, everything's fun, everything's amazing. But there's a depth when you think of the virtue of joy. There's actually more depth to it. It's like it's a level of contentment even in trial and struggle. It's like I can continue in a way that I'm doing what needs to be done, regardless of how challenging it is. I can still have an underlying peace and an underlying joy, even when things get really hard. And you think about that in the depth of love. Now, I'm going to use a mother example, which is not necessarily great if you're not at that stage in life yet, but it's one that's always stuck with me. It's like when you are underslept as a mom and you have a newborn baby and your body's in pain because you just gave birth, it's extremely hard. You're in a lot of pain and your brain is going through a lot of things and your body, it can be traumatic just giving birth, but there's this depth of joy to holding your newborn that's like unexplainable, right? And I feel like there's these moments and things in life that we can look at and be like, where are we, yeah, what are we placing value on, and what are we allowing to ourselves to forge through in the struggles and the hard times that actually lead to stronger relationships even in our life and the way we view things. Because I think what can happen is when we're just relying on dopamine buildups, like I've actually never read the book, but there's a book, Dopamine Nation. Have you read that one?
No, I've read The Comfort Crisis, which kind of
It's
touches
probably similar.
similarly. Yeah.
Yeah, I had a friend tell me about that other one, but I never circled back around to reading it. But even just by the title, you kind of get the concept of, it's just like dopamine hit after hit after hit. And it's almost like we have all these addictive behaviors, even if it's not an outright, when you think about an addict, like when it comes to like the drug addict versus, but we do it with other things. We do it with foods, we do it with social
Phones.
media, yeah,
Yeah.
phones, everything, right? So it's like we end up with this relationship fallout, whether it's the relationship we have with ourselves or the relationship we have with others, where when we have that drop or where our expectation is not met, it can lead to resentment, to being more snappy, to withdrawing is a big one too. And it's kind of almost this like, you should have known, or it should have been this way, or and it's, oh man, it's a tough one because we all go through it at one point or another. And it's like you said, I mean, we don't necessarily have all the answers on it, but I think it's a good time of year to give yourself some time for reflection and be like, okay, I know I honestly, I haven't even taken time for a lot of reflection. I've been trying to get little windows of it, but I'm hoping to spend a little bit more time over the next week even to do that, right? And be like, what went well this year? What maybe didn't go so well? What could we learn from? What could we do differently going into 2026?
Yeah,
And so I think having
absolutely.
those checkpoints are a good idea.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think too, like you bring up a good point of the dopamine. It progressively gets easier and easier for us to get those hits of dopamine. So what it talks about essentially in the comfort crisis, which is what I'm assuming to be similar to what the book you referenced, is like we're not adverse to hard things because you get the dopamine hit afterwards. However, we have such an abundance of that like I can pick up my phone and start scrolling and I get the dopamine hit, but I haven't done anything to earn that, if that makes sense.
Mhm.
Rather than say you go out for a run and then you also have some dopamine after, or like endorphins, and you feel like accomplished because you did something hard,
Yes.
right? Rather
It's
than
putting in a good
the
day's
phone
work,
thing.
right?
Yeah, the good days work. So we're not adverse to doing that. It's just like we have such an abundance, and like same thing with emails and scratching some sort of dopamine itch. Like I definitely am more so addicted to my emails than social media at this point, which is a little bit of a problem. But like it's so easy just to open your phone and go and do that rather than do the hard thing. But the hard thing is essentially going to progress you forward, and also give you a dopamine hit. But we, as just human beings and our brains, just look for easy. We're always looking for easy, right? When you think about, we used to go and salvage our food, we used to go hunter gatherer, we used to hunt, and then we go to the grocery store and trade money for food. We don't grow our own food anymore, and now there's Uber Eats and DoorDash, and I can even get my groceries
Agreed.
delivered to my door. Like it's just everyone's always looking for the easy way out.
It's so
um
true.
yeah, but it doesn't always build as much, I guess, like confidence and integrity too. I think that's also part of it. Something that I want to work on in 2026 is definitely like reducing that amount of like the dopamine. And rather than going into my bed and like scrolling, I want to like read, finish a chapter, do something that's a little bit nicer to my brain and mental health, than phone addiction, which I think a lot of people struggle with, to be quite honest with you.
Yeah. Well, it's
Yeah.
interesting. This Advent season, I've had like just listening to what you say, it's so doing things that are hard come with more I don't know if the word is gratification. What word am I looking for? Fulfillment. I think
Yeah.
you end up
Fulfillment.
feeling more fulfilled after you've gone through something that's harder. Now, it doesn't always have to be this extreme thing. I think a good example of what you were saying is, do I just order takeout and that's like super easy and then I get it instantly and then that's it? Versus if you actually take the time to cook your whole meal, right? And the effort and the planning that goes into that and the smells as you're cooking and all of those steps can almost make you enjoy that meal more, right? You know the effort that you put into it. And it's such a good feeling when you've put a bunch of effort into a meal and you sit down as a family and your family members are like, "Oh, this tastes so good." And it kind of gives you that reinforcement. And it's just those it's not to say there's anything wrong with ordering takeout once in a while when you need it, but it's seeing that there is good things even in the everyday things if we're willing to see them, right? And sometimes what I think anyways requires you to do is to silence your mind a bit. So one of the focuses for this Advent that I've been doing a challenge on Hallow is a lot about cultivating the ability to be in silence. And it's such a beautiful thing. And it's a very hard thing for many people to do because in silence, you're kind of left with yourself and your own thoughts. And it tells you a lot about how you view yourself. Because if you're spending time in silence and you're avoiding it because your brain is instantly going to self criticism or sometimes, sadly, sometimes even self hatred type thoughts, it tells you, okay, there's some internal work to be done here about, am I being loving towards myself? And how does that make me treat myself? But then how does it make me treat others? So,
Yeah.
one thing they did through this challenge is they build the time. So, they're like, okay, first day, it's like, we're just going to try to be in silence, like really focus silence for like 30 seconds. And the lady who leads it, she's like, I don't even care if you only get 2 seconds. Like it sounds crazy, but our attention spans are very short, right? And then it builds up to 3 minutes and so on, right?
Yeah.
But that's something that I would challenge people on too. It's like try even just being in silence. It can
Yeah.
help your brain a lot.
I think that's really good for reflection too. Fun fact, actually, I was, I guess, forced into silence yesterday. I got home from work and it was pitch black. The power was out till like 10:30, and so I was just sitting with myself, had my candle on, sitting in the dark. I got my flashlight and I just kind of journaled. And
Oh
I
wow.
think it's so important, especially in December. And if you do want to reflect on like your past year and what your goals are for next year, expectations of what next year like realistically can look like, I think having that silence and quieting the noise from the outside so you could be with yourself and kind of know and understand what's going on inside of your head, the thought process that you might want to change, the thought patterns, the self talk you might want to change or shift. It's really important to just be in that silence that I think that we can be essentially afraid of, or avoidant to, just because we're so used to being go, go, go and like avoiding our negative emotions. So any kind of, oh my gosh, if I don't want to be like alone on or like running, I don't want to run without my headphones because I can't, like I just can't.
Yeah.
I run without my headphones from time to time, and I swear I have the best runs because I can think clearly. I come up with great like content ideas. You can actually foster your creative mind when you're just in silence with yourself without any kind of noise. So
Yeah.
definitely, I definitely recommend that too.
Yeah, that's huge. And again, we're kind of focusing on looking at like what's going on in our reality, what's going on in our minds. And there's an example of you. It seems like a small, simple thing, but that is a way that you're challenging yourself, right? Like it's actually a hard thing to do when your mind is just wanting to find headphones, right? Because you're like, well, this is what I
Yeah.
do, and this is what I do every time, and you're kind of shaking that up a bit, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, that's cool. No, that's a really good example. I
Yeah.
was thinking about this too with as you were saying it, I was thinking about how much silence can help us to improve our listening skills as well. And when we've practiced that some in our own time, when we're alone, we can actually translate that to times when we're with others. And so I have two quotes that I screenshotted recently because I was like, oh man, these are so good. I don't know. They resonated highly with me. So I'm hoping that it resonates with some of you as well. But the one is a Mother Teresa quote, and it's like, the beginning of prayer is silence. If we really want to pray, we must first learn to listen. For in the silence of the heart, God speaks. And what she's referencing there is it's really hard to hear God's voice if all that's ever there is noise, whether it's internal or external noise. And a lot of it comes down to listening. And the reason that I bring that up, I know that maybe not everyone on here prays, but I also know that there might be some of you that want to pray or want to try, but you're like, I don't know, I didn't grow up praying. I don't even know what you're talking about, right? So the reason I wanted to just bring that perspective in is because lots of times people think prayer is just talking. They're like, okay, I need to thank you, Lord, for this meal that we're about to eat, right? Like you're saying words. But the bigger part of it is actually silencing your mind and listening in the silence and the quiet. And it doesn't mean that, everything that happens in your prayer life or in times when you're in meditation or calm, right? You're cultivating this internal development, right? And it doesn't mean that it's going to just magically change your external circumstances. So this is this other quote that I think is really good for when we're looking at our disposition as we're learning these skills. The quote goes like this: something does change when we trust God, but it may not always be our circumstances. Often the thing that changes is the disposition of our hearts and knowing that God is with us in the place that we're in, no matter what, like no matter how hard it is, no matter how great it is, right? And so having that knowing and understanding, I think can really help with our perspective as we're going through things, especially because, just coming off of going through Christmas, when I was younger, I was always very optimistic about this is the best time of year. It's the most wonderful time of the year. But then what happens when you have a loved one that's passed away and it's your first Christmas without them? It's really, really hard. It's a harder time of year, right? And so there's a lot of people that are going through that right now. And it's like, how can we help get through the seasons that just feel really straining emotionally? And I think that these types of things, developing those internal skills, can go a long way with our stress response,
Yeah.
especially.
Absolutely. I think they offer stability as well, rather than having like what you mentioned, the high highs of, oh, it's the best time of year. And then you have that adverse of like, wow, now it's the worst time of year. And it's kind of this emotional roller coaster ride. Having it outside of yourself or looking outside of yourself in whatever spirituality, I think can put the pressure off of you. And like, I feel like as humans, we're trying to always try and understand things and figure stuff out, when it's like maybe you just need to just let things be and like stop trying to control everything and kind of allow it to not have control over everything, right?
Right. Well, and I think what we've spoke to so far, Haley, is doing some internal work, really.
Mhm.
And looking at if you're finding yourself hitting the end of the year, maybe having some disappointments. I mean, and maybe not. Maybe there's some things that were really exciting and went well for you, and that's amazing. But if you're hitting that point of disappointment, first, don't go right to looking at everyone else and looking at your circumstances and starting the blame game where you're going into this stress response, right? And it's showing up in a short fuse or anxious scrolling or cravings or emotional eating or going right back to all these habits that are just going to make this situation feel worse. Sorry, I'm stuttering for some reason. But yeah, they're just going to make everything feel worse. So first look at, okay, what can you do yourself internally before you are ready to now look at how are you going to set the expectations for your relationships and for the external things going on in your environment. And sometimes what that looks like is we have other episodes on the communication piece of this, right? And going, okay, well, if I'm disappointed about how a situation went down, who knows, maybe it's the family gathering that everyone ended up bickering instead of having a fun time. Look at it and go, well, did you ever paint an expectation verbally for people? Like, hey guys, I was expecting everyone, I'm kind of expecting everyone to show up around 5 o'clock, right? Because if you've never said that and everyone is showing up at different times and you're irritated because you're like, why isn't anyone here yet? The food is ready. I don't know, like simple things that people get irritated by. It's then you're going to have a better time if you actually communicate that expectation. I did this the other day with John and I. We were talking about we've had a ton of snow drop here, like tons and tons of snow. And it was very disappointing to him that the day that we had the most snow, the snow blower works on every other day, but of course it doesn't work on that day. Well, he's irritated as crap because he was like, dude, I started the snowblower last week and it worked just fine, right? So the expectation is this is going to work when it needs to work. So I think painting the expectation, I said to him, I'm like, listen, I know that you are having trouble with the snowblower, but can we just, even if you get it working, can you just decide in your head that it probably won't work? Like, kind of almost expect that it's not going to work. And then when it does, you can be pleasantly surprised that it's actually working.
Yeah. Yeah.
Uh, so I think
Absolutely.
those are, I'm just thinking to like the external things now and like what irks people, right? And tips them off for the day.
Yeah, and I think we can bring that into like goal setting and expectation setting for the following year. I always like to say like I don't want anyone to like lessen their dreams just to like meet the expectation or like lower the expectation
Right.
just because I don't want to be disappointed. Like no, I don't
Yes.
think that's the correct way to go. However, I do think like just like realistically looking at okay, what is a stupid realistic timeline for me, because sometimes people are like, oh, I want to start a business and I want to do this and grow and like get rich and all this, and they're like, I'm going to do that in a year, and like, honey, that doesn't happen in a year. So like, let's just pace ourselves. What is a more realistic goal? So right now we're not taking away, okay, I want to be a business owner, I want to be like a millionaire and whatever, but what
Yeah.
is a realistic expectation along that timeline that you would have achieved within the year to come, right? That could be like hitting a 10K or like XYZ, fill in the blank, but something that is along the lines so you aren't going to get royally disappointed. And then also, you don't just like write out your goals on a piece of paper and then stash it in your junk drawer to forget about for the next year. And then now that we're reflecting, you bring it out and you're like, hey, I forgot about this.
Yeah. Oh, whoops. I didn't actually do anything to work towards this.
Yeah.
Yes, totally. And I mean, and those expectations and goals can shift and change as
Mhm.
things unfold. But I completely agree. Time frames are huge. So, for example, even if we go back to the snowblower example, it's like, well, if the time frame, if it's like I'm expecting to get all this done in an hour and now the machine's not working, now I'm disappointed. Versus if you're like, okay, this might take me all morning or this might take me all evening. And then if it's working, it'll actually be less time, right? You still need to complete the task. And so that would be like a short term example versus yours is a long term example. And I love that example because we think about it so often. This comes up with fitness clients, right? Where you're like looking, or and nutrition, right? Or the combination of the two when you're looking at a fat loss goal or you're looking at a period recovery goal, like you go through with a lot of your clients. And it's like, you know what you now have helped so many women in that realm. People need to rely on your like trust you in a sense, right? Where it's like, listen, I've seen many women come through this recovery. Here's the average time frame for recovery. And then you can set your goals around that for your workouts and your nutrition. And same thing happens with chiropractic care. It's like if I paint the expectation and be like, okay, listen, there's different timelines for healing. If this is like your basic mechanical low back pain where you just tweak your back and you're getting some nerve pinching or you're getting a lot of muscle tightness, this could take 1 month to get better from. If this is a completely blown out, bulged, or herniated disc, if you did nothing, I mean, it could take a year and a half to recover from that. That's a very different timeline, but there's a lot of similar symptoms in those two cases, right? So when you paint that realistic time frame, it really helps your psychology throughout the process, either of getting to your goal or like even if it's in a recovery situation, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. And then again, I think too, the like you brought up, like the comparison to other people, I think is a huge one that we have. rather than just staying in our own lane. And that's one reason why social media is such a tricky little thing, because they just show you what the highlight reel is. Like, I could show you all of XYZ, what I achieved. However, you're not seeing the fact that like I was so stressed out for multiple times of the year. So it's like you see all of this glamour and woohoo, that's awesome, but you never see the sacrifice that was made.
Yeah.
So always understand that whatever you see on Instagram, like say like you're on a fat loss phase and someone had this extreme transformation, know that there was a lot of sacrifice. And realistically, like if you are not also willing to make that sacrifice of change that that person did, then you can't expect that same outcome either,
Mm-hmm.
right? Knowing too that you're an individual with your own, like everyone has different lives, different obligations, priorities, and things like that. So not every single person's journey is going to look exactly the same. So obviously stay in your own lane, but know that there will be a sacrifice that you have to make, because I think people can get really excited in the first 2 weeks of goal planning. And then after 2 weeks, it gets hard and they just fall off. It's like, well, what did you expect? This to be easy? Like,
Yeah, no,
yeah.
exactly. And I think when we're painting those expectations, we need to make it clear, like you said.
Mhm.
It's like, I know if you went back to the episodes at the end of 2024 and then the beginning of 2025 for Fresh and Fired Up, like you could go back and listen to them. And I haven't listened to them in a while, but we'd probably be talking about SMART goals, right? Make
Yeah.
sure they're specific and measurable and attainable, realistic, make sure there's a time frame,
Timely, yeah.
timely and all. And then the X, like if you had an X, it's like then you need to execute, execute,
Yep.
execute, right? And it's in the execution that people usually fall off. And so that's fine, we can talk about that in the new year. Those new year
I
goals,
think that'll
right?
be a good one in the new year. First week, second week even.
Right? But I feel like the biggest thing, okay, I was just saying this to one of my fitness clients the other day. I was saying, like, it's crazy how many people want to start exercise programming. They want to start training for something in January. And I mean, if you live in the North Country, that is the coldest, darkest, shortest days time of the year. I'm like, this is like
Mhm.
the worst time to start a new habit. Literally start. I mean, you can, but I'm saying if you're worried about yourself not sticking to it and it's been a while and whatever, it's like if you usually in the spring or summer, you're going to have a way better chance of sticking to it. I'm not saying to do nothing till then. I just find it fascinating, like the psychology with the new year. You know what I mean? That I'm like,
Yeah.
dude, start in the spring or summer. You're gonna have all this daylight and sunlight and warmth
Yeah.
for actually then executing on your plan. Yeah,
Wow, that's super niche to you. I love that though. I'm like,
yeah.
this only applies to people in Peace River and the Arctic. Um,
Well, yeah, if you're like, dude, why do you live where you live? That's fine. Like if you actually have that more of the year, then that won't affect you as much. But
yeah, no, I think you bring up a good point though. I think the new year is great for reflection, but you essentially can start a goal whenever the heck you want. You don't
yeah,
need to wait
anytime.
till January 1st. That's just where everyone kind of starts to think about, oh, new year, new me.
Yeah, new year, new me. Uh, well, something I was thinking though, when we're looking at expectations, and I agree with you, you don't want to lower your goals just to meet the expectation. But I was thinking about this even when we're doing programming. It's like, but if you have a gap in your knowledge where you're like, oh, I didn't realize that in order to meet that goal, I would need to factor in deload weeks or active recovery or oh, you got sick or whatever, right? And so sometimes when you're looking at setting your time frame, it's also educating yourself on what it entails because if you're like, oh, I'm going to do this thing and I'm going to get super strong, but then you've never done it before and you just think all that it requires is to you just like go balls to walls at the gym 6 days a week, you're gonna you're probably gonna end up disappointed because it's like there is a smart way to go about the process and that applies for every industry really,
Yeah,
like what you said
absolutely.
about business building even, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I think the longevity of your goal and thinking about like how long do you want to keep this up? Because it's definitely a marathon. And if you're thinking that your willpower is going to prevail, or just like the motivation is going to continue, it does not. And I will tell you firsthand, it's really hard to be motivated when you're like you've been working out 6 days a week and now you need to keep up that standard. So
Yeah.
make it so it's not going to I guess impede on your life's quality, because it's so not worth it. Yeah,
Yeah, it should be adding value, not like stripping
exactly.
it away. Not to say that's going to be easy, because sometimes usually challenge also adds value, but you don't want to completely destroy your body in the process, right?
Yeah.
And that's the key. One thing that I wanted to bring up too is, how do we take these expectations and these goals that we have and convert them into something that are clear requests, either for our internal dialogue or for when we're communicating it to someone else? So, a way we can do that is look at, what is your preference in a situation? Like, what are you really hoping for? And a way you can communicate that is, I would really love this, or for this to happen, right? That's the preference. But then you need to make a plan. So here's what I'm going to do. So when we reference like the SMART goals, right? It's like, here's how you lay out a plan. Or here, I'm hiring Haley and she's giving me the program. Here is the plan. Now I need to stick to the plan, right? Then I think it's important to add in this protection piece. So we have preference, plan, and protection. And the protection part is, take your journal, write out, if this doesn't happen, here's the backup, or here's the boundary. So we have preference. Here's what I'd really love. Here's the plan. There's where you actually set the goals and start executing them. And then give yourself that psychological protection piece, which goes, okay, if this doesn't happen, what's my backup plan? What are my boundaries? Or what am I just going to shift and tweak from here as we go?
Yes, that is so. I love what you said, because this is so prevalent to a lot of my clients right now, just because routinely end of year is quite busy career wise for a lot of them. And so they were like, Haley, like I can't make it to the gym. And they had this expectation because like last week and last month, oh my gosh, I was hitting my 3 day week workouts and now I can barely make one. What do I do? I feel like a failure. Like in those moments, okay, we're not going to stress to make it to the gym when you have zero time or your priorities have shifted, because it's very okay for them to shift. How about we do a home workout, body weight workout, so you don't have to travel to the gym, but you have 30 minutes to do? And they're like, oh my gosh, you're a savior. And it's like, we can be
We
flexible.
can
Like
do
there's
this.
no rigidity here. Like we can find a different avenue that's going to work for your shifting schedule, because it's meant
Yeah.
life is never goes to plan ever. So
Yes,
flexibility is a
exactly.
very big asset that we all need to learn essentially.
Yes, completely agree. Because I think when you look at it and you take it and you apply it to real life, like you said, like even what I said, it's like, okay, that sounds all lofty and great. You have this formula, good for you, right? It's like, how can I actually use this in my real life? Think about it. Okay, what's the expectation? What's your preference? I'd love a calm morning to like sit and drink my coffee. So I'm going to get to bed early at 9:30, and I'm going to prep breakfast ahead so it's all set. And now, if the kids are wild, right? So my preference is, I'd love a calm morning, right? My plan is, okay, I'm going to get to bed early and I'm going to have breakfast all prepped. So that should create a calm morning. Now, you throw in the kids and the kids wake up wild, right? In a mood. Now, this is where the protective part comes in, where you're like, okay, if the kids are wild and nobody's listening, I am going to take a 5-minute reset, take a few deep breaths, and maybe talk to your spouse and be like, and I'm going to ask you to tag in and help me. Or you're going to use a line that's like, can I make a clear request so that I don't stew silently or I don't blow up, right? And so I think it's very important when we're talking about goal setting, expectations, and even like coming up with plans to help ourselves through each day. I want you to actually think about your real life scenarios. And in your time, because we were talking about cultivating silence, and even what you said, Haley, you spent some time journaling. it's like write down a few scenarios to be like, this is something that keeps tipping me off. This is an area that I'm perpetually disappointed or irritated, annoyed, frustrated, whatever word resonates with you. And write those things down and be like, yes, this keeps coming up. And this is not working. What do we need to do differently? Because I think a huge thing, especially this time of year too, end of year, beginning of a new year, is we start listening to all these books, or you're listening to our podcast, and we have all these lofty plans. But then what are we implementing? And it needs to be simple and it needs to be implementable. Don't you agree, Haley? I agree with myself.
I agree 1000% with everything you just said.
I figured you would. That's why I said it.
Yeah. We're the same person.
We are, basically. Yeah, what are you going to do, right?
Exactly.
No, but I think that's really good. Did you have any other closing thoughts before we wrap this up? We're wrapping up 2025, people.
Oh my gosh. It's so crazy. I wish life would slow down, to be honest with you. That's all.
That's all, folks.
Yeah, dear God, it's me, Margaret. Can life slow down a little bit?
Can life slow down?
That's it.
I feel like the close is you don't need to lower your standards. You do need to upgrade your communication and give yourself recovery time. And then I feel like it's like, guys, let's just get excited about, I feel like 2026 can be fun, right? Like can be fun when we're doing it sustainably, and we are maybe making fewer of those silent contracts that are setting us up for the dopamine crash. Mm-hmm. We can create a little bit more clarity, a little bit more nervous system care, and all those wonderful things. And I think it's going to be great. You guys are great. Heck yeah.
Everyone's great. We appreciate you coming along for the ride of 2025.
Yes.
Hoping you come along for the ride of 2026. So
yes. And for those of you who've shared the show, extra thank yous to you. And if you haven't shared the show, you should share the show. I can't do my heart right.
Like this.
How's that? Is that better? If you want to see our heart hands, you need to go on YouTube. You need to subscribe to the channel. And I guess that's all, folks. Be free, feel fresh, and live on fire.